In a world where social media reigns supreme, the pressure to look perfect have never been greater.
This is not what I look like right now. This filter should be illegal. Here's the real me. Oh my gosh.
We'll also delve into the dark side of social media, where filters and edits are only making the problem worse. For those with body dysmorphic disorder, this pressure can be all-consuming.
I kind of suspected that maybe there was a bigger problem than just insecurities that everyone has.
In the case of BDD, what I do see is I see a lot of tortured people.
I am interested to know more about the lives of people dealing with body dysmorphic disorder and how, with social media's impact with filters and edits and people going through drastic plastic surgery, this new level of perfection is potentially worsening their condition.
She looks in the mirror a lot, and then she points out one thing she doesn't like, and then she gets pretty emotional about it. So it is kind of tough to see.
It was, a lot of checking my reflection constantly. I couldn't walk past like a car window without sort of seeing what I looked like.
For many, taking a glance into the mirror is harmless. For people battling body dysmorphic disorder, it is completely different. This is the case for 20-year-old student Kayla Park. Body dysmorphic disorder, often known as BDD, makes her want to conceal all her insecurities, and it completely reshapes how she feels about her appearance. Kayla, how do you feel like makeup has contributed to your body dysmorphic disorder?
I think it's made it worse in some ways because I'm somebody who wears makeup quite frequently. I'm not as used to seeing myself makeup free, and I think that can make me a bit uncomfortable when it comes to my appearance.
How long have you been wearing makeup for?
I've been wearing makeup. I started dabbling in makeup at like 12, but I started properly wearing makeup at like 15.
Wearing excessive makeup is just one of the ways in which people with BDD attempt to cover their perceived flaws from others. This focus can often be mistaken for vanity, so I asked Kayla her thoughts on being perceived as vain.
I think because both to a certain extent is somebody who is hyper-focused on their looks. The people are automatically going to assume if you're looking in the mirror a lot, if you take a lot of pictures, that sort of alludes to vanity. When in actual fact, it can be the opposite. But I think because there isn't as much awareness surrounding body dysmorphia to date, so I guess people are going to assume what it looks like, and it appears to be vanity.
What led you to believe that you may be suffering from body dysmorphic disorder?
I think when I kind of realised that my insecurities were starting to affect my day-to-day activities, I guess I sort of started to kind of obsess with how I look, like maybe looking in the mirror more than maybe I should, or trying to see if, I don't know, my body has changed at all, or how my face looks today. So I think when it just became a little bit excessive, so I kind of suspected that maybe there was a bigger problem than just insecurities that everyone has.
Body dysmorphic disorder affects about 1 to 2% of the adult population in the UK. Among 69 million people currently living in the UK, it is reported that roughly 1,400 people are diagnosed with body dysmorphic disorder. Sadly, body dysmorphic disorder has one of the highest suicide rates of all mental health conditions, with 1 in 50 making an attempt on their own life. People with body dysmorphic disorder believe themselves to be ugly or defective. Because of the stigma, they tend to be very secretive and reluctant to seek help. But do these figures suggest a bigger problem within body dysmorphic disorder findings? I am on the hunt to know more about body dysmorphic disorder, so I discussed with a licensed psychologist, Professor Fred Penzel. Fred is based in New York and specializes in the cognitive and behavioral treatment of body dysmorphic disorder. As a pioneer for effective treatment for BDD, I thought he would be the perfect person to speak with. I just thought it would be really good to find out more knowledge about this subject and just kind of take a bigger interest into it, really. With people dealing with body dysmorphia, how is their day-to-day life affected?
Well, I think there's sort of a whole spectrum of effects. It depends on how severe the person's problem is. Some people can keep these things, contained and hidden in more mild cases. In more severe cases, it can affect the person's entire ability to function. There's things that people don't or can't fix, basically, and those people mostly just hide out and avoid other people or don't appear at night under bright lights. I've had people who thought their skin. I had one person who thought that their skin had a greenish tint to it, and of course nobody could see that, and that's typically what's maddening to these folks, is that people look at them and say, "Oh, I don't see anything wrong. What's the problem?" But yet they see it very clearly, and they can't understand why nobody else can see what they see.
What do you find to be the biggest misconceptions when it comes to body dysmorphia?
You mean on the part of the patients or the part of the public?
For the public.
Well, I think first of all, there's very little understanding of these disorders in general. People say, well, why don't you just focus on something else? Or they think that that it's just a matter of willpower somehow, that the person can sort of choose to think about something else or distract themselves somehow. And, of course, that's a great mistake, because it can't possibly work. It never helps. I mean, if the person could stop obsessing about it, they would, but of course they can't. So that's one. Another is, these are, aside from the disorder, these are regular people. These are not, people who are insane or anything like that. I mean, the behavior is very incomprehensible to people, but when you keep getting hit with doubtful, repetitive, negative thoughts day after day, it really takes a toll on a person. And as I say, the thoughts are extremely believable, because people have this sort of underlying preconception that if a thought occurs in my mind, it must be my own thought. It must be real, and I have to do something about it, basically. And this is where they go wrong, because the thoughts clearly are not like that at all, and all their attempts to do something about it only make it worse. It's very paradoxical. It's like the more they try to escape the thing that they're afraid of, the worse it gets, and the more they're thinking about it, because you can't deliberately not think about something. If you tell yourself not to think about something, you're already thinking about it, so it's too late.
What do you find to be the most difficult part of your job? So the most difficult part of treating patients?
Biggest obstacle generally is their high degree of belief in what's wrong with them. We have people who come in and they're absolutely convinced, and they'll just argue with you. They'll listen to what you have to say, but then they'll say, "No, you're wrong. I see this. I something's wrong with it." People, so sometimes they're very concerned with symmetry of their bodies, even. And now bodies aren't symmetrical. You can look in the mirror and say, "Well, the right side of my body doesn't look exactly like the left side of my body," and we say, "Well, it doesn't anyway." In real life, nobody's symmetrical. We're kind of like roughly symmetrical, but it's like if you take a photograph of someone's face and you split it in half and then reverse the two halves and put them together, it looks like you have almost two different faces. So getting them to accept that they even have a disorder can be extremely difficult.
Oh wow. Fred has given me a great insight into just how severe body dysmorphic disorder can become. Now it's time to uncover further how BDD can affect a person's life. I am on my way to Nottingham to get more information. I am here at St Mary's Church, Nottingham, to interview with Bex Knight, a volunteer at the Body Dysmorphic Disorder Foundation. The Body Dysmorphic Disorder Foundation is the UK's only charity dedicated to raising awareness and alleviating the suffering caused by body dysmorphic disorder. Bex is also diagnosed with an eating disorder and body dysmorphic disorder, and I thought she'd be the perfect person to speak to. The 29-year-old works as a PR manager at Tank and details her daily battle with body dysmorphic disorder.
It's been quite a long experience with I was sort of quite aware of my body at around 8 years old. I was a bit bigger than my peers, hit puberty before, you know, everyone else. I had boobs and things like that. So I was always a little bit self-conscious at a younger age. My disordered eating, which doesn't always happen with BDD, although disordered eating can be quite interlinked. But that's sort of how my body dysmorphic disorder started. I had an eating disorder in my teenage years for about 6 or 7 years.
This is the height of Beck's eating disorder at the age of just 18. Typically, eating disorders develop prior to body dysmorphic disorder, and the longer an eating disorder and body dissatisfaction occurs, the higher the rates of body dysmorphic disorder occurring.
I didn't realise what I had was body dysmorphic disorder. I thought that everybody was, well, I mean, everybody is quite unhappy with their own body. You know, we live in a society where everything we read is about how a woman looks, whether that's sort of online, on Instagram, it's kind of everywhere. It wasn't until I had a job rejection actually a few years ago, and it sort of spiraled me, and I was then, my way of thinking became really erratic, and I was thinking I didn't get the job because I'm ugly, it's because of what I was dressing like, you know, what I wore. And it wasn't until then I sort of said that to somebody that they were like, that's not a normal way of thinking. So I went through the NHS actually and was fast tracked, and they were sort of like, yeah, it's very clear BDD, and I got put on a course of cognitive behavioural therapy.
Mental health charity Mind recommend cognitive behavioural therapy for body dysmorphic disorder. This therapy helps change your attitude to body image and physical appearance, explore the worries with your perceived physical flaws, and reduce the need to carry out compulsive behaviours.
I did it for a year, and it's helped me with coping mechanisms. I don't do therapy anymore just because I found CBT was a bit too soft, a bit too airy-fairy for me, which it works for some people, it didn't really work for me, but I have found that it sort of helped me with coping mechanisms that I use if I sort of, it's not always bad, but it's always there, and sometimes I will have weeks where I don't want to go to the office. You know, I wouldn't go to the gym because I felt too ugly, but then I would spiral because I wasn't going to the gym. I'm now in a place where lockdown meant I couldn't go to the gym.
Yeah.
That's when I really realised that I had a sort of quite an obsession with going to the gym. And one of the things that I learned in therapy, that BDD is sort of a form of OCD, it's sort of under that umbrella. So not going to the gym was a really good thing for me, because it meant I didn't have that sort of addiction. I do Pilates once a week, which is amazing because it's a really good workout, it's really good for you, but I find it mentally really, really healthy for me. And I'm trying to build up to go back to 2 days a week and then 3. But again, I sort of have to be quite careful with that because that then becomes my obsession.
I have kind of the mentality that if I don't like something about myself, it's up to me to, if I can change it, I'm going to attempt to do that. So that's kind of why I started my fitness journey and going to the gym, because that's something I feel like I can actively change and hopefully make a positive change.
Kayla Park spends most of her free time at the gym. She is very consistent and has been on her fitness journey for over a year now. Although the gym has been a great way for Kayla to cope, she often has difficulty to see how much progress she's made. Kayla's boyfriend of 3 years witnesses her struggles with body dysmorphic disorder. Here is what he has to say.
Like, she's really strong. Like, she does hip thrusts. She does like I believe 130 kgs on hip thrusts, which is pretty big. She looks in the mirror a lot, and then she points out one thing she doesn't like, and then she gets pretty emotional about it. So it is kind of tough to see. There'll be times where she wears a face mask because she's insecure about like what other people are thinking, stuff like that. So I wouldn't say it affects me, but it does kind of make me sad that, you know, she doesn't see like how I see her. Like, maybe soon one day she can see it, because at the end of the day, like, even if she gets her goal, there's going to be another goal. There's going to be something else. If there's body dysmorphia, there's always going to be another thing.
This is Kayla's mood board at home. Kayla often has a difficult time accepting her body and often compares her gym progress to influencers online.
From about the age of 14, I had kind of looked at a website which essentially rated how like attractive you were. This was the app. Essentially, you kind of had to like upload a picture of yourself, and from that you would get a rating of your physical attractiveness. When I had taken the app, it kind of said that I wasn't attractive, that my eyes were too small, my nose was too big, and my head was too long. And I think even some of those things I hadn't even necessarily had an insecurity about prior to using the app, and especially I think as a 14-year-old as well. You know, you're conscious of how you look anyway as a teenager, but that definitely, I guess, heightened my already existing insecurities and also created new ones as well. And it's something that even now I feel that still affects me when I look at myself in the mirror, in pictures, etc. Social media kind of is this like rose tinted view of what, I don't know, a person might look like.
Some booty. That's a realistic booty. No, come on.
But when you're just scrolling through Instagram, you're not thinking about that. You're seeing an image, you're seeing someone and thinking, oh, they look like this and I look like that. Yes, I think it does definitely play a role, because I feel like I'm more prone to comparing myself to other people online when I'm on social media.
And it's kind of, it makes my heart break for younger people, because this wasn't around when I was young, but yet I was still self-conscious and aware of my body, and it makes me sort of think, if this was around when I was 8, 9, 10, where would I be now? For me, it's that sort of endless doom scrolling, and it's the videos of what I eat in a day. Yeah. Some people find them interesting. I just find them a bit weird.
I understand that.
Why is that interesting what somebody eats in a day? What if they're eating less than you, or more of you, or they don't eat and it's just so many. It's more content for you to compare yourself against when you just don't need it.
Thank you so much for taking part in this interview today, Ben.
Thank you so much for having me. It was lovely.
That's definitely helpful.
So Kayla, what are your next steps for getting help when it comes to body dysmorphic disorder?
Well, I guess now for me personally, it's like the early stages, maybe looking into getting some therapy, or just, I guess, for me, I want more of an understanding of things, and just, I want it to affect me less. I don't want to be so conscious about my appearance. I think, yeah, I guess those are the next steps, and just kind of work on my self-confidence as well.